Good morning, Dashers, and welcome to speech class. This is Mr. Lewinsky recording from my home office, just taking some time to introduce you guys to our newest assignment, which is the Student Podcast Challenge. This is a planned assessment. You'll see it on our original calendar and in our original syllabus. So it is actually very fortunate that we get to do something at this point in time that is really easy to do remotely and something you would not actually have to present in front of the class. You would usually have to listen to yourself in front of the class, but you don't have to stand in front of the class and deliver any information. So I would just like to take some time to walk you through what the assignment is and where you can find good information on our assignment. So if you would head to our communications speech class and then topics, and then the Student Podcast Challenge. You'll see we have our new topic posted, and on the new topic is our assignment sheet. So why don't we begin there? The Student Podcast Challenge assignment sheet. So we open that, make that a little bit bigger for everybody. There we go. Whoa, too big. Okay, so your task for this, ladies, is to create a 5 to 12-minute podcast. And you can create it about anything you want, but you should use the following prompts as a guide. And our prompts, there are 5 of them right here. You can pick from one of these. I think it's a lot more helpful if you do choose one of these because it can really guide what you're trying to accomplish with your story. If you wanted to do something else, that would be fine. You would probably want to message me on Teams to talk about that so that we could make sure that it's going to be fruitful for you to pursue what it is you need to pursue to be successful in this assignment, okay? I think most of the time, students probably focus on something they want to change in the world, okay? Like a big change they want to see for the future. But you can really pick any of these. There's not one that's better than the other. I think you should pick one that is driven by your interest. As you guys know, if you care about something, it matters way more when you're presenting about it and spending all this time and energy on it, and something that you think will work for you, okay? Our calendar, as posted here, actually takes us through after Easter. Now, this schedule has EI days listed after Easter as if we're not coming back to school after Easter. I don't know if that's true. I'm just planning for that to be a possibility. In any case, this week, week 16, we will have enough time to be able to go through presentations if we're at school or if we're remote and doing this in our at our homes, okay? So we'll plan on having all presentations due by April 20th at 8 in the morning, and then I'll be able to upload those and we can start listening to them if we're at home. And if we're at school, then we can just make sure we do that during class time. For the assignment, we have a couple of things that are going to be collected on Turnitin.com. These are our Turnitin assignments, and they're already posted on Turnitin, and they're already posted on MyDSHA, but these are the ones that are going to count for the most points with regard to what you're building for your speeches. So some things have changed here from our original calendar. We're going to wait until next week, Friday, to have your topic selected, and that's going to be on Turnitin. I'm actually going to ask you to type up a little description of the sounds you're trying to use, and that'll become more clear after we go through a couple of podcasts and have some conversation about how they use sounds. And then your outline is going to be due on the 6th. I think that's the same as the original outline time frame, but that's when it's going to be due. And that's all indicated up here as well. So your outline is due on the 6th. Your recording sounds are due on the 1st, and your structure is due on the 27th. As we go into this a little bit more, I want you to know that your assessment criteria is going to be different. We're not going to use the PV Legs rubric for this because students aren't actually presenting in front of the class. So we have a different rubric that we are going to use for this. Also, please understand these requirements and guidelines here, all right? This podcast challenge is actually a challenge that's run by National Public Radio. And if you were to get it done a little bit early, you could submit it to them into entering their student podcast challenge and then be played nationally on the radio. But I don't know that we will be finishing this on time. I think they extended submissions of that to April 7th, which is a little bit before when I expect you all to be finished with this. But we can still use a lot of this because it is helpful to be using the same technology as what thousands of other students in the nation are using. So for example, when you're finished recording, you should upload your recording to SoundCloud, which is very easy to use. It's just uploading a file, and that becomes something you can share very easily as well. You can't include any music, either original compositions or third-party songs. That gets into copyright infringement, and we don't want to even play around with that because that's not something we're supposed to be doing. You can't violate anybody else's rights, so you can't be like intellectual property. That's all about plagiarism and whether or not it's okay to be talking about other people's ideas without giving them credit for that. Also, there's another note in here that's really cool. Submissions should be created in SoundCloud, but they often record in Voice Memo and edit that to iTunes. You could also do that in iMovie. A lot of students use iMovie. Another program, if you don't have a Mac or an iPhone, is Audacity. So Audacity is another program that you can use that students use that work. If you record using Audacity, you're not going to be able to use SoundCloud, but you can send me the Audacity file, which is totally fine for me. If you wanted to finish early and submit to NPR, it would not work on Audacity. So just be aware of those things. The rubric is online, and I think it's more easily viewed if we take a look at the actual rubric document. I'm just going to take a moment here to... It's the morning time when I'm recording this, so I'm going to just have some coffee. Oh, that's good. It's good. Good coffee, yeah. So our rubric is broken up into 5 categories. Compelling story, structure, personality and creativity, unique voices of your community, and production quality. So these first four categories will be evaluated for everybody the same, kind of no matter what. And really, as you can probably understand with the PV legs, it is, you're probably going to land in here if you're putting in good effort, okay? If you go above and beyond, and if your quality is really good and your structure is really insightful, and that's going to be important to have that insightful structure, then that's when you start moving up towards this category here, which is 90 to 100%. So for production quality, this is the thing that can be a little bit different depending on what you decide to do. If you use sound or audio, it's not required to use sound or audio, but that would be like sounds you incorporate. Like if we were at school and you wanted to record the ringing of the tones to indicate the passage of classes and incorporate that in, that's a way to use sound. You don't need to use sound, but if you do, it should be layered, which means it should fade in and fade out, and it shouldn't overwhelm the speaking that's going on, and it should be adding to the story. If you're not using sound, like you're not using additional sound, then all I'm asking for is that it's clear and understandable. Either one of those two things works for me. It's just a matter of what you decide you want to be able to do. So that rubric is different. Each of these categories is equally weighted at 20%. Okay, so we've talked about the assignment, we've talked about the rubric. This link here, the Student Podcast Challenge link, actually takes you to the Student Podcast Challenge website. And there's all kinds of information on here. The prompts are on here. They do actually judge and listen to all of this. Our rubric is taken from the judging rubric. Some frequently asked questions. And then some of the materials that I pull for us to listen to and to use for this are also present on here. So if you poked around on here a little bit more, you would find that information. But what I'd like to show you now is probably the most important thing for all of you for this. It's so important I put an exclamation point on here. It's the podcast planning guide. So the podcast planning guide is really your guidebook for what you're doing and on the day on which it's happening. Okay, so I know that we had a separate discussion post for today about our weekend. I'm asking that you guys also complete this one. And these answers don't need to be very long. They do need to be completed, okay? So take a look at this stuff and answer these questions, and you can answer them in one post to MyDSHA. And then we'll take a look at some examples for Monday. There are 2 podcasts. You got to answer those 2 questions for each one. I'm sorry, answer these questions for each one. This is a separate podcast. It's about the making of Instagram. It is very long, and I think it's not very engaging, but I think it's interesting if you listen to like 4 or 5 minutes of that, just to see what's different about So Chocolate Bar and the haunting effects of going days without sleep. So these are things that we'll be doing on Monday. This will be due by 3 p.m. on Monday. That's another important point to note here, and you can see it on our first slide as well. Post by 3 p.m. in order to be counted for attendance. My attendance is due a little bit later than that, but I want to give you guys some time to submit that and then be ready to move on and have that turned in so I can actually record my attendance in a timely fashion as well. Okay, so March 23rd, we're doing this. We're looking at examples. Brainstorming, March 25th. Choose 3 prompts. Those are the prompts from the actual assignment sheet. Answer the questions about the prompt and post by 3 p.m. Okay, so here's the deal with this one. You want to identify a podcast structure. These are our structures. You'll hear different structures in the examples that you will listen to. You want to post your ideas to the discussion board entitled Brainstorming, and then respond to at least 2 peers and make sure everyone that posts has responses. Consider these questions. What do you think might be difficult? And what might be significant to consider given the topics that are being decided on? For the 27th, this is actually something that's going to be posted not to MyDSHA, but to Turnitin.com. Okay, so this will be one of our building assignments. We're not going to post to MyDSHA. We'll post to Turnitin.com for next week, Friday. And you have some structural questions like, what's your driving question? What's the story not about? Which helps you figure out where you need to focus. What's the podcast structure going to be? And then, is it a conversation? Is it an interview? Is it a scripted narrative? Okay. Supporting concerns. How will you ensure it's fair to the people and ideas it represents? How will you engage your audience? And what are your dream ingredients? So with this, again, you have to be answering these questions. These answers don't need to be very long, but you need to demonstrate that you've put some significant thought into them. Otherwise, we don't know, quite how it's going to work for you. And I want to make sure that, especially because this is remote, that I'm doing as much as I can to support you. Oh, there's one more question there. What will the audience remember when it's over? What's going to be your message? What's going to be your big point? Brainstorming sounds. Answer this question for each podcast, post to MyDSHA. So here's Radio Field Trip and Radio Rookies. What sounds do you hear and how do they add to the podcast? Sounds. Turnitin.com. This one is on the assignment sheet. Type up a description of sounds being used and how they will be recorded. This should be no more than a few paragraphs. In fact, if you're more than a page or page 2 pages max double space, that's probably more than enough. The check-in on April 3rd is for MyDSHA. How is everything going? What difficulties do you have and what's going well? And then the outline is for Turnitin. Again, the outline structure is defined by you. If you want to use one of our earlier outline structures, that we've used for, say, our special occasion speech, that's totally fine, but that should be typed up and submitted so that we know you have a plan. And then your last check-in assignment is April 3rd. I'm sorry, I'll have to change this. This should say April 8th, not April 3rd. This is for April 8th. Again, how are things going? What difficulties do you have? What's going well? This is our last day of class before we actually have to submit, because this is the last day of class before Easter break. And then for podcast submissions, everyone needs to turn them in to me through Teams by 8 a.m. You can post the file to Teams, or you can send it to me in a Teams chat. Either one of those two things works. Podcasts will then be posted the entire class via Teams or my DSHA. I haven't decided how I'm going to do this yet. Probably my DSHA, just because it'll be a simpler place for us to post those and have them found. You listen to 3 podcasts on Monday, 6 on Wednesday, and 6 on Friday. And you have to answer commentary for each podcast. So for each day of podcasts, there will be a discussion post, and students will post 1 time per each podcast. So on Monday, if there are 3 pieces posted, you need to post 3 times, once for each podcast. And you have to answer these 2 points. You post 2 positive pieces of feedback and 1 piece of constructive criticism, and that's due by 3 o'clock each day of class. So I'll have the podcast posted by 8. You have until 3 to listen to the ones you need to listen to, and then to respond to them. And these posts will count as your attendance for these days, okay? As I look at my notes here, as far as recording goes, I think we talked about using iTunes. I think most students actually use iMovie. If you just post a picture into iMovie, that'll buy you a couple minutes of recording time, and then you change the picture. And the picture doesn't matter because I'll never see it. You'll just send me the audio file through SoundCloud. You can do recording on voice memos. You can also do recording on Audacity. That's mainly for PC users. Yeah, I think, as long as you guys know you have to be turning things in every day, then that's going to be a pretty good situation. Also, please know that I'm available via Teams from 1 to 2:30 every day, and that's something that you guys can be checking in on. We can group chat, we can have a video conference. So all those things are things we can do to support you in all of this. Please, please, please let me know if you have questions. I'm happy to help you guys, and I'm happy to be here to support you. One last thing, I think that the interface for assignments might look a little bit different, but for the discussion posts, I have this set to future, so it'll show all the discussion posts. You'll see like March 23rd discussion and attendance. It's going to show up on the 23rd, and it's going to be due on the 23rd. All these discussion and attendance assignments are only going to be active for the day for which you need to submit to them, okay? And then if we look at the active assignments, in those you'll see like podcast topic, podcast sounds and recording, outline, and final. Those are the things that are longer term turn it in assignments, especially for these 3, or that one you have to turn in a little bit separately, which will turn in usually via, actually students usually send that via email, which would be fine as well. So again, ladies, I hope that this is something that helps you understand what we're doing for our podcast assignment. Please know that I'm going to do everything I can to support you in all of this, and I'm happy to be a resource for you as much as I can remotely, even if that means that I've got to come back into my office and ignore my kids for 20 or so minutes while I make a video or talk with you. That's fine. Don't worry, my wife is home right now too, so that's not like they're just running around doing things unsupervised. Yeah, so make sure that if you have questions, you ask them, and take care of yourselves. Stay away from other people, but go outside if you can. Go for a run, go for a walk, and otherwise, I look forward to talking to you guys soon. I miss you guys, and I hope things are going well.